If you're looking for some beautiful Christmas ornament inspiration, look no further, I've got you covered. We'll be doing some unique, nature-inspired, all the way to some boho chic. Hey there, welcome. My name is Donna. We'll be starting off with this white plastic ornament I picked up from Dollar Tree, but feel free to use anything you have in your stash. I also have this floral napkin and some matte decoupage glue. Feel free to use Mod Podge if that's what you have. So I need to remove the layers from my napkin. I like to use tape to pull off the under layers. This only had 2 plies, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I'm just testing to see if there was another one, and there wasn't. So now I'm going to start to break this down into smaller pieces. You can get so many beautiful napkins out there. This particular one is from a store called Dollarama here in Canada, but definitely check out your local dollar stores as well as anywhere that sells party supplies or places like grocery stores. They would have lots of beautiful napkins. So I'm going to start off by applying a coat of my glue to the ornament and then pressing the napkin piece into place. You'll definitely want to add a layer of some decoupage glue over top, and then you can use your finger to smooth it out if you would prefer. I don't mind a few wrinkles on things like this. I just think it adds to the texture, but I know some don't like the wrinkles, so you can smooth them out with your finger. So I'm going to continue to apply the glue and the napkin until the whole surface of my ornament is covered. So my ornament is all covered, but I still had the odd white spot showing, so I'm just going in and adding some little pieces to cover up those little white spots. You'll want to set it aside to dry. I like to put it on a paintbrush and then place it in a jar. While that's drying, I'm going to distress the top. Now this part is optional. I am using archival ink in the potting soil color. Archival ink is a permanent ink, so it works well on surfaces like this. I'm just applying it using a makeup sponge. I'll apply 1 coat, allow it to dry, and then add some more. You can see the difference between the 2 of them right here. Once your ornament is dry, you can put the topper back on, and now it's time to decorate. So I have a selection of these beautiful paper roses that I picked up from a store called Dollarama here in Canada. I distressed a few of them using my potting soil ink. And I also have these leaves. They were in my stash from some Dollar Tree flowers that I picked up in the spring. I just snipped them down to size, and now I'm gluing the flowers and the leaves into place. I'm just creating a beautiful arrangement around the top of the ornament. Feel free to use any flowers that you have or that you can get, and greenery as well. You could add a touch of Christmas greenery in something like this as well, but I thought these little leaves were so pretty and perfect for a garden-inspired ornament. So now I'm just going to add just a little bit more. I decided to use these cute little yellow flowers, and I'm just going to snip them down to size and glue a few of those into place as well. So I'm really happy with how the arrangement is looking on the ornament, and now I'm going to use that trim from burlapfabric.com. I'm just going to cut a strand down and then tie the 2 ends together, just like you see me here, and that will provide a nice little hanger for your ornament. I decided that I just wanted to add just a touch more, so I'm going to use this cotton trim in the cream color. It was just in my ribbon drawer, and I'm going to tie just a simple little bow around the top of the ornament hanger. I'm just adding a little dab of hot glue to help hold the bow into place, and then it's ready to be hung on the tree. I just think this is so beautiful. So for this ornament, you will need a butterfly. I picked this up from my local dollar store. It had a clip on it, so I just removed that. You'll also need a branch. Now, I foraged this branch from a nature walk. I love to do that. I highly encourage you to do the same. I really like branches that have a little bit of character to them, so I snipped it down to size, and then I'm going to be now tying on some jute. You'll want to do this part first before you start to decorate, because you want to make sure that it hangs properly and that where you decorate it, it is going to be showing properly as well. So I'm just going to tie the jute on each end and then just fiddle around with it until it's hanging properly. And then I'll know where to put my butterfly and all my other little decorations. I had picked up these cute little mushrooms from my local dollar store. Dollar Tree has little mushrooms as well, and so do other craft stores. I love these two different sizes. I'm going to be giving them a coat of some paints, chalk paints in these two colors. It's New Life and Whisper. I'm mixing the two colors together to match my butterfly. But first, I'm going to give this a coat of some gesso. Gesso is a primer that artists use on canvases. And I know that the red will seep through my paints, so I wanted to seal that all up. So I give 1 to 2 coats of the gesso and then allow it to dry. The mushrooms are all nice and dry. Now they are ready to paint. So I'm going to apply 2 coats of my paint to the mushrooms, allow them to dry. The paint looks lighter at first, but once it's dry, you'll see how well it matches the butterfly. The mushrooms are all nice and dry now. I'm going to start to add some little dots to the top to make them look like toadstools. I'm just using the end of a paintbrush and just some off-white paint, and I'm just going to apply those little dots. Looking so cute. I am going to just apply them randomly until I am happy with how it looks. So I've allowed the mushrooms to dry, and I also gave them a coat of varnish. That will just help to protect the paint. Okay, so now I'm adding some preserved reindeer moss onto the little branch. I'm just applying some hot glue and then pressing the moss into place. That will just help to build a base for our butterfly and give that kind of nice gardeny look. I'm just playing around with the placement of the butterfly. I need to make sure that there's going to be some adhesion between the branch and the butterfly. And then you can just go ahead and hold it till set. Then feel free to add more moss where you would like. I always just continue to test as I go along to make sure that my ornament is hanging properly as well, so it's not too heavy on one side or on the back or the front. Now I'm also going to adhere the little mushrooms. So I'm just figuring out my placement, and then I'll use some hot glue, put it into place, and then hold till set. And I'll do the same for the little one as well. So I'm really happy with the placement of the mushrooms. Now I'm just going to go in and add some leaves. You could add some evergreens as well if you'd like. I'm just using some hot glue and applying those cute little leaves into place. And you can use some flowers for this as well. I think that would be really pretty. I just really like the simplicity of this and how it's kind of all monotone. Next, I'm adding these cute little white flowers that I am just snipping down, and I'm going to tuck a few of those sprigs into place as well. I really love how this one turned out. I just think it is the sweetest. So I still had some of my paint left over from my last project, so I am painting this square wood plank that I had from Dollar Tree. Just going to give it one coat all the way around, including the edge. I'm going to set that aside and allow it to dry. Once it is dry, I am now going to be applying this beautiful rub-on transfer from Dollar Tree. I'm going to cut out the part that says "You are a wildflower." I thought that was so fitting for a garden themed Christmas ornament. If you haven't applied rub-on transfers before, you just need to make sure that your surface is clean. Put your transfer into place, and then you can rub it on using a craft stick or whatever you have on hand. You just want to make sure that you lift it up once in a while to see how your transfer is doing. It kind of turns cloudy once the transfer has adhered to your surface. So I'm just peeling it up. You can see I've got a really good transfer there. I decided I wanted to do the back side of this one as well. So I have this French script rub-on transfer, again from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to figure out the placement of this one. I really like the script right here, so I'm just going to put it back onto the backing and then put my plank on the surface and just draw around it. And then I'm going to use my scissors to cut it. This way here, I know exactly how much I need and I won't be wasting the rest of this transfer. So again, same process before, you're just going to put it into place and then rub it on using a craft stick. So I think this looks absolutely beautiful so far. Now I'm adding that little touch of nature that I always love to add, and that is my branches. So I'm figuring out exactly where I want them and what length I need, and then I'm going to cut them down to the size that I need using my snips right here. And then I'm going to be applying them using some hot glue. Now I want them to be exactly on the edge, so I'm just applying some hot glue there and then placing it on the surface and pushing the branch into place, and then allow the glue to set. I did that for both the top and bottom, but I did notice I saw a bit of the hot glue, so I'm going to go in and add just a touch of some preserved reindeer moss, and that will hide the glue. So at this point, you can add any other decorations that you'd like. I'm going to keep mine really nice and simple and just leave it with the moss and the branch. But I am going to use this beautiful hemp green cording that I had. It's like a jute twine. And I'm going to use that for my hanger. So I'm just figuring out how long I need it. And then I'll tie it onto the branch on each end. And feel free to add a dab of hot glue to help hold that into place. This ornament couldn't be any easier. I absolutely love this one. So I picked up these glass disc ornaments from Michael's. You will also need a selection of some dried flowers and greenery and grass. I'm just going to remove the top of the ornament, and then I'm going to start to fill the inside with these beautiful dried flowers and grasses. I'm going to start off with this rosemary that I had, and I'm just going to insert it through the top. And then if you want to, this here is actually some pearly everlasting that I had dried. I like to use the end of a paintbrush just to move things around so I can try to put them into place somewhat. I'm going to just continue to fill the ornament with some dried florals until I get a look that I really like. So I have some dried roses and some lavender, grasses, baby's breath, ferns, and some seed pods. So I have my ornament all filled to the way I like. I'm really happy with that. Now I am going to distress the top of this ornament. Now I'm just going to be using some antique gold craft paint for mine. I would encourage you to go out and spray paint. I couldn't do that. My garage was being used that day, as well as it's just too cold to spray paint outside. So I'm like, well, let's try craft paint. So I did end up giving the topper 3 coats of the craft paint. And then I decided that I would go in and add some distress ink here. I wanted to age it a bit more. So, sorry, this is archival ink again in the potting soil. I'm applying it with the sponge and you can see that that just ages it even more. So if you're not able to spray paint like I was this day, then you know that you have an option if you don't want that shiny silver look. I am going in and just sealing it up with my varnish. The varnish did kind of reactivate the ink, but it worked fine. I just applied it all over, allowed it to dry, and you can see how well that looks. It definitely has an aged look. I'm just going to put that back into place. And now I'm going to add some trim. This is some lace trim that I picked up from Dollar Tree. It's just beautiful. It's one of my favorite trims to use. Just again, cut it down to size and then tie the 2 ends together. So just for last added touch, I'm using this raffia. I like to crunch it up just to make it a bit more pliable. Just wrapping it around the neck of the ornament and tying a simple bow. I'll just trim off the ends and then I'll just add a little dab of some hot glue to help hold that into place and prevent it from coming apart. And then it's ready to go on the tree. Isn't this just so beautiful? So I picked up this beautiful little frame from the thrift store. It's got a little hanger on it already. I also have this one here. It's a little brass one as an alternative, but I really wanted to use this one since it already had the hanger on it for me. So I just removed all the parts and I'm also removing the backing. So you can see I'm just having to pry that off and there's some little nails there. I had to pull those out as well. So I wanted to distress this one as well with my potting soil archival ink, but first I needed to remove the adhesive that was on the back, so I just scraped that off. And now I can go in and apply that ink using my makeup sponge. I do end up adding 2 to 3 coats of this, allowing it to dry in between. I just love the way this is looking on this silver frame. It definitely adds a bit more of a patina, a very unique look. So I had this book page that's coffee dyed, and then I also have this rice paper from Stationery Pal. They sent this to me a while back. I'm going to be using my matte decoupage glue, and I'm going to just apply that to the book page and then press my rice paper into place. I will have the link to Stationery Pal for you down in my description box as well in case you want to check them out. So I just pushed that into place. Now I didn't bother to add a coat of my decoupage glue on top at this point, and you'll see why here in a bit. Next, I'm going to be using my piece of glass to create an insert that'll fit inside the frame. So I'm just going to use a pencil and trace around it, and then I'm going to be using my scissors to cut this out. I'm just testing out to make sure that that paper fits inside. It's got beautiful texture now. Okay, so these little ferns, I actually dried them this summer. It was a really big fern and I just cut them down. I'm just going to be applying them along with these pressed violets that I had as well inside the frame. So I put the frame over top of my paper and I'm just figuring out the placement, and then I had to remove it again just for easier access to the paper, but I keep applying the frame over top just to make sure it looks good. So once you've got a placement figured out, you're gonna again use your decoupage glue and apply the flowers into the glue. Now I was kind of hoping that the rice paper would show up more. It does a bit, but once I applied the glue over top, it did disappear a little bit, but it still gives some beautiful texture. So you want to make sure you apply enough glue that your flowers and fern pieces or whatever other botanicals you have into place, and then apply glue over top, just like I'm doing here. So I'm really happy with how that's looking. I'm putting the glass sheet on top just for a little while with some weight, and I'm just allowing that to set up. I didn't leave it on for too long, otherwise this piece would have stuck to the glass, and I didn't want that to happen. So I allowed it to completely dry, and then I'm going to trim off any of the excess. But before we put it all together, I wanted to create a backing. So I've got this this cardstock, and I'm just cutting it down or tracing around it and then cutting it down to the size that I need. And I also have more book pages that are coffee dyed. So now I am going to be applying just a glue stick to the cardstock, and then I'm going to be taking my book page and I'm going to be pressing the cardstock into place. I just want to make sure my script is going the right way. I'm using a bone folder just to make sure it's pressed down really well. Then you can take your scissors and cut it out. So my backing is all ready to go. I'm going to start to put everything back into place. I forgot that these were actually originally from Pottery Barn, so I wanted to keep that little piece of paper. So I put my botanicals into place, my piece of glass, and then my Pottery Barn paper down. And then I am going to be applying my backing just using some hot glue. I'm just going to add a little bit more of the ink on the back, and that'll just help to blend it all together and give a bit more of a grungy look. Now for the trim. Again, I'm using this lace and this cotton trim from Dollar Tree. This cotton trim, I believe it's from my local craft store. I just tied that around the hook. I think it looks so cute. And then again, I'm using this lace from Dollar Tree as my hanger. I really am so happy with how this turned out. It is the perfect garden-inspired ornament for your tree. Here they are all laid out for you to enjoy. So for this ornament, you're going to need these cute little buckets, either in the galvanized or this white color. I picked mine up from Dollar Tree, but you can get them at other craft stores as well. You can get them in the craft section as well as the wedding section. As you can see, I have removed the handle as well as those little side hangers on both of the buckets. Now you want to be careful because there are some sharp edges there. Next, I am using a nail and I'm just going to poke a hole through the bottom of our bucket. this will actually end up being the top. Now this hole isn't actually big enough, so I do end up making that bigger, but I'll show you that in a little bit. Next, I am going to now apply some jute twine around the base. This is now our base of the bucket. I'm just adding a little bit of glue and then pressing the twine into place. This will cover up that little bit there that got damaged a bit, as well as those sharp edges that I had made. You can see right here, it covers it up really nicely. So I'm just going to continue to finish off here, and I like to cut my string on an angle. I find that it just gives it a nice clean finish. I had also finished my wraps where I had started, so it's all just in line with each other. Now, just to add another little touch of that rustic element, I'm adding a little bit of the twine at the top. I just felt it balanced it out really nicely. Okay, so I have both my little buckets done, and this is where I decided to make the hole a little bit bigger. I am going to be creating a hanger, and I discovered that my hole was just too tiny for my twine. So I'm just going to show you first off how you can make a single bell ornament. That's right, we're going to turn these little buckets into bells. So I just created this loop and I pushed that through again with our twine, and I created a knot, and that knot will prevent that string from pulling through the hole. Next, I'm tying on a jingle bell. Now with the jingle bell, you want to make sure that it is high enough up on your string that'll be hidden inside the bucket. I'm just tying this off with a simple knot. Once the bell is in place, you can pull that up and you can see how cute this is. You can decorate the top. It was that easy to turn these little buckets into cute little bells. But I was inspired by something I had seen on Pinterest, and it was using larger galvanized pots and turning those into double bells. Well, I thought it would be really cute to make an ornament that had double bells. So I am just going to take my string and tie a knot. You can see right here, I left a nice long tail that will allow me to tie on a bell. And again, you want to make sure that the bell is up high enough on the string so it's hidden inside the bucket. So our first bucket is all ready to go. Now I'm going to string the other bucket. And as you can see, I'm using one single string for both. And right here, I'm just figuring out how long I want to make my hanger before I tie the knot on the inside of this second one. So here now I'm tying my knot, and again, you just want to do that because you don't want this string to pull through our hole in the little buckets. And just like the other one, you want to make sure that you tie your bell on so that it's hidden inside your little bucket, or now a bell. So I was having struggles stringing this into my bell, and a viewer recommended that I use a touch of Mod Podge on the end, and that will help me to string either a button or like this situation with a bell, and it'll make it easier to thread. So I did that and it worked really well. So thank you for that tip. Okay, so our set of bells are all good to go, and now it is time to decorate. But before I decorate, I'm just adding a dab of hot glue on the top. That will help hold our string in place so the knots are guaranteed not to come through. So now I am creating a total of 4 just really simple and basic loopy bows. I'm going to be placing 2 on each bell top. I'll be just tying these off with some white thin florist wire. I picked this up at my local dollar store. I'm sorry, I don't know what the gauge is. I've had it for a really, really long time. All right, so now I dove into my stash and I have these greenery pieces. Again, I picked these up from my dollar store as well, but a viewer told me that Hobby Lobby has something similar, but you can just find anything that you have in your stash that would work really well for a little piece like this. So I am just adding a few pieces of the greenery, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my bows onto each bucket. This is a great project to use up all those little scraps that we have tucked away in our stash. So I thought some little bells would be really cute tucked in on the top as well, and just adding some more greenery. And then I'm also going to add some berries just for a little pop of color. Of course, by all means, decorate these how you would love, if it was elegant or traditional. However, I just really love this rustic farmhouse look. So here I have some pip berries. I got this garland from Dollar Tree. I'm not sure if they have them this year or not. If they do, feel free to leave a comment down in the comments section to let me know. All right, so I'm just adding some little berries in. I snipped them off of the garland, and they are the perfect size for a piece like this. And here they are. Aren't they just adorable? I love how these turned out. All right, for this ornament, you can use either a cinnamon stick or a twig. I am going to be using a twig. You're also going to need some jute twine. As you can see, this is a little bit thicker, and I'm going to be cutting some strips. They're anywhere from about 4 inches up to 5 inches long. It doesn't have to be exact, as we will be trimming this down. So I am cutting, I believe it is about a total of 30 strands that I will be using to cover this branch. I'm just snipping off the top because it was quite jagged, and I'll show you why I did that here in a bit. So next, I'm now going to be tying the strings on just with a single knot, just like this. And I'm going to be tying them on all the way down the branch stem. Now, you do want the strands to be somewhat even on both sides. So I'm just adding the last few strands here, and then you want to make sure that you leave a bit of the base of your stem exposed. Every once in a while, I go back in and I tighten up those strings. I want to make sure that they're not going to come loose, but we are going to be doing a step to help to prevent that from happening. So I have all my strings tied on, and now I am just going to be trimming the strings down to create a tree shape. Now, the beauty about using jute twine is that it is natural, so it will decompose. So if you feel unsure about the waste, you can definitely compost this. Or you can save all those little bits for another project. All right, so now to help seal it all up, I've got some decoupage glue in matte, as well as some water and a stiff bristle brush. I started off with about 1-to-1 ratio, and it was too watery, so I added a little bit more glue, and it ended up being about 1.5 to 1, like 1.5 glue to 1 water, and it was a really good consistency. So now I'm just going along the knots, and I'm also going along the strings, as you can see right here, and that will help us to shape this, and it'll also help to hold its shape. So once you got the one side down, you'll want to flip it over and then add a coat of the glue to the other side, and then you'll want to set it aside and allow it to dry well. Before I set it aside to dry, I am shaping it a bit. I want a tree shape, and I also wanted to straighten out some of the knots, as some of them were a little bit crooked, but that's just me. You don't have to do that, just create it how you would like. All right, so our tree is all dry, and I decided it was still a little bit too wide, so I'm trimming it down a bit. This is up to you, how wide you want it. This just creates a bit more of a modern look, so I would say that this would actually work well with like an industrial look. I felt that the top was still a little too tall, so I trimmed that off, I'm going to be using a star on the top, but first I wanted to add my hanger. So I just created a basic knot on some looped string, and I'm going to glue that into place on the very top. Once the glue has set, you can then add some glue to your star and put that into place. Now you can see the knot on the other side, so I decided to go in with a second star to cover that up, and I think it looks really, really sharp. So I'm going to show you a second design using the same techniques, except there's going to be one little difference. Here you want to just make sure that you add glue just to the knots. You do not want to add the glue to the strings out the side. You'll want to let that dry really well. And then you can take a comb and start to comb through those strands. Now, this is why you want to make sure that that glue is dried really well, because otherwise it will pull apart. So I'm just going to go in now and trim it down. Again, you want to create a tree shape. So then you'll go in and use your comb again, and this will really loosen up those strands. You can see I am wiggling the comb back and forth, and that's helping to break up all those strands. I'm just kind of pulling away any of the loose fibers and then kind of fluffing the tree up. You can see it's got a real bottle brush tree look to it. And that is actually something I wouldn't mind trying out someday, is making my own bottle brush trees. Let me know if you have ever tried that before. So you can go ahead and just trim off anything that's sticking out, and then once it's all fluffed to your liking, you can then again add that star to the top. Again, I needed to trim down that top end. I needed it to be flat so I can glue on my hanger. This time around, I decided to glue on my star first, but of course it doesn't really matter. Either way works just fine. So this tree definitely has a lot more of a casual rustic look, but I am really liking how they both turned out. All right, so for this ornament, you're going to need some type of ring. I've got some different metal rings here, brass rings, belt loop rings, and even a binder ring. You can also use some wood rings, whatever ring you can get your hands on. So I'm going to be using this 2-inch brass ring, and I'm going to be using this thicker jute rope. You'll want to cut them to be about 6 inches long, and I do end up cutting a total of 18. I also cut a strand of this thicker jute twine. It's a little thicker than the Dollar Tree hardware twine, just to give you an idea of its thickness. So now I'm going to attach these 6-inch strands to this hoop. You'll want to fold it in half and create a loop, place it underneath the brass ring, pull the tails up and through the loop and pull tight to create this knot. Now this is a macrame technique, and I've always thought it looks so cool and I love it. So again, place your loop underneath the ring and pull the tails up and over through the loop and pull tight. So I'm going to add all these strings around our hoop, and if you feel that you need to add some more, then by all means. It really depends on the thickness of the twine or string that you will be using, and that'll determine how many strands you need for your ring. So you can still see the brass ring showing. So this is where you can kind of pull and tighten everything up and go in and add some more strands if you feel you need it. I didn't want any of that brass ring showing, so I made sure I added enough to hide all of that. Once your ring is all filled in, you can then take those strands and pull them apart, just like you see me doing right here. It is a really cool technique. It gives it a really casual look, kind of feathery and airy once we complete unraveling all these strings. So you can see how cool it is looking so far, but of course I dug out that comb and I'm going to brush through all these strands. I wanted it to be a little more straight. It's quite curly and I didn't want it to be quite this curly. Just going in and I'm going to trim it down, and then I'm going to use the comb through all these strands again and just continue to work on the strands until you have a look that you are happy with. I do end up going in and trimming it down a little bit more, but again, it's just personal preference. So I want to make sure all my knots are going to stay in place. So I'm using my decoupage mixture again, and I'm just dabbing just the knots, and then I will allow that to dry. Once dry, you can leave your ornament just basic like it is here, but I decided I wanted to decorate mine a little bit, so I'm using this green hemp cord twine, and I'm going to create just a simple basic loopy bow. I just think this is such a pretty color for the Christmas season. Again, just feel free to decorate this any way that you would like. You can use other cording again for this project. It does not have to be jute twine, but I really wanted to go for that rustic farmhouse look. So once I have the placement figured out, I'll just glue my bow into place, just as you see right here. And then I'm going to add these rusted bells. Now, I created these way before I was on YouTube, so I will try to remember to leave the link to the tutorial that I found this, or where I found this, down in the video description below. I'm just going to glue those into place. If you're unsure where the description box is, to your right there should be a little gray arrow. If you tap on that, a menu will drop down showing the description, and you click on read more and it'll show you lots of different information for our videos. All right, so now I am going to add my hanger. I just folded my string in half and wrapped it in around and pulled the threads through the loop that I had created. Now, this is something that you want to make sure that you've got your hanger directly above your decoration that you've got on your ornament. That way here it looks balanced. So you could leave it as is, really rustic, but I wanted to add again a little pop of color. So I'm grabbing these darker pip berries that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to tuck a few of those in amongst the bow and the bell. You could also use some greenery if you'd like, or little pine cones, whatever you have in your stash. I think this is a great rustic Christmas ornament for a farmhouse Christmas tree. All right, for this ornament, I am using a mini mason jar that I got from Dollar Tree, but of course you can use any little jar that you have on hand. I decided I wanted to try out this jute twine that's got some white string threaded throughout. I am adding some hot glue to the jar, and then I'm going to wrap just the middle section with this jute twine. I'm just working by little sections because that glue sets really quickly on the glass. So I'm just right at the end here, I'm gluing the strand into place, and then I'm just kind of bending it down to the next level, and that creates a really nice smooth transition. I'll carry on wrapping this jar with my hot glue and twine until I get near the bottom. So I am at the bottom, and I want to make sure I finish off where I had started. And I like to trim it off at an angle so it creates a nice smooth finish. All right, now I am creating my hanger. I'm going to be using this thicker jute string, and I am going to just tie a long strand on one side and just tie it off with a basic knot, just like you see right here. And then I'm going to be doing the same thing on the other side. So you do want to try to tie your second string on so it's even to the opposite side, but you can always adjust as needed. So once you've got that all into place, trim off any excess and then tie the two long strands together, and that will create your hanger. Here I'm just trimming off those bottom ends, and then I'm going in and adding just a dab of hot glue on the knots. That will help prevent them from falling apart and help to hold them into place. So you can leave it as is, but I wanted to add some pip berries. So I'm just going to glue it into place right there on the jute twine. That'll help to hold it. And I'm going to start to wrap them. So I wanted to create kind of a vine look. So what I like to do is just kind of bend and twist the wire, and that will create a lot more of a wild rustic look and a little bit more of a natural look. So I'm going to continue to work on this, glue it into place as needed as I go along. A touch of greenery would be really pretty around this as well. You can even add some bows if you'd like. But I don't know, I'm just really loving these pip berries. They're such a fun thing to have in the stash. Okay, so our little jar is all ready to go, and now it's time to fill the inside. I have these beautiful rustic picks that I have had in my stash, probably about 3 years or more. I picked them up at Michael's, and I believe they were on clearance. I like them because they've got pine cones and leaves and evergreens, but they also have some really cute birch bark stars. And if you know me by now, I love to use birch bark in my decor. I'm loving how this looks, so cute, and it was really easy to put together. All right, for this ornament, I'm using my thicker jute rope that I got from Dollarama, and I am going to be cutting down a 24-inch strip. You'll also need a cinnamon stick, and you're going to want to wrap the loop around, pull the tails through, around the cinnamon stick. You could use a twig as well, but I thought a cinnamon stick would be really fun to use. Next, you're going to want to cut down your rope to 8-inch long strips, and you're going to want to create a total of 8 pairs. So I'm going to continue to cut these down until I have enough. Okay, so we've got all our strands together, and you want to take one, fold it in half and create a loop. Place it underneath those 2 strands attached to the cinnamon stick. Take the second strand, and then you'll want to bend that one in half as well, create a loop. Place it in the opposite direction on top of the strands. The bottom tails pull it through the top loop. The top tails pull it through the bottom loop. Then you'll want to pull both the sets of tails, pull tight, and lock in around those center strands. Now again, this is a macrame technique, and I thought it was so fun to do. I love the way this looks, and I'm just going to continue to do my pairs. Again, I had a total of 8 pairs. And I'm going to continue to go down my center strand that is attached to the cinnamon stick. once in a while, you're going to want to go back in and make sure all those knots are tight. All right, so now I am going to go in and unravel each of those strands. All right, we've unraveled all those strands, and now we're gonna go for that comb again and start to pull through all those strands to create that kind of feathery look. I'm just going in now and I'm gonna trim off my bottom strands. That's the ones that are attached to the cinnamon stick, and I'm going to unravel those ones as well. And then I can comb those ones out too. Now I'll show you how we are going to be shaping this here. You're going to want, of course, use your scissors to trim off any of the excess. We're kind of creating a leaf or a feathered shape. Once your piece is trimmed down, you can continue to use your comb on it to create that kind of feathery look and trim anything off as needed. All right, so now I am ready to use my decoupage glue, and I'm going to add some right onto the knots again. It will help set everything in place. And then I'm also gonna go over the loose strands that we had created because I need to shape this. And it'll still be flexible even once it sets, but it'll still hold its shape. So it won't be too stiff. Here it is just plain undecorated, but I decided to add these vintage bells I had in my stash. I will have a link for you down in my description box that is for my Amazon favorite store, and I found some on there that looked very similar to these. So you can check that out if you can't find any locally. I found these ones at a thrift store. So I just tied these onto some string, and I'm adding a total of 3. Once I have all 3 of them onto a string, I'm just going to stagger the lengths, and then I'm going to tie all 3 of these strings together in a knot. So I was just trying to figure out where I wanted to place them, and I felt like they were still a little too long, so I'm just making my knot a little bit higher. And then I'm going to trim off the excess threads or the excess strings, and then I'm going to glue that knot just at the top of our feather. That will hide it really, really nicely. So I'm adding a dab of glue on each knot of our bell because the knot is actually pretty tiny and I didn't want those bells to fall off. All right, so now I am going to create my hanger. I'm using the thin jute twine that I picked up from the hardware section in Dollar Tree, and I'm just tying it onto each end of the cinnamon sticks. You'll just want to trim off any excess string, and then I again am just adding just a dab of hot glue onto those knots to help hold them into place, as well as seal up those knots so they don't fall apart on me. I think this is a really cool piece. I can't wait to hang it on the tree. So I went into my stash and I found this plastic ornament that's about 2 inches in diameter. I've had this piece for a long time. Feel free to use any size you want. I removed the topper, and then I wanted to paint it out in a neutral color. I know gold is a neutral color, but I didn't like the shininess of it. So I'm gonna go over it with this tan paint. And to make it a little easier, I placed a paintbrush inside the hole, and that way here I can paint the whole entire piece, place it into a jar, and allow it to dry. Now I typically add some gesso to plastic first before I add craft paint, but I'm going to be covering this up, so I was okay if the paint kind of flakes off a little bit, but once we're done, you won't even be able to see this. All right, so that is drying. And now again, I am using our thicker jute rope. I've got a long strand here and I've got a tail and I crossed it over and I'm going to create a loop and you pull the main string through that loop. Now this is called finger knitting. Again, you've got your loop, you're gonna grab the main string and pull it through your loop, and you can see how we're creating a chain. I love this technique. I've been doing it for a long time. My kids have done it for a long time as well. It's really, really fun. So I wanted my chains to be a little bit tighter, so I'm gonna do this again. My tail is on the top. I crisscrossed it over and I'm going to create a loop, and you pull that loop, you pull the main string through the loop, and you'll continue to do this until you get a chain that's in the length that you need. So this is really neat because you've got two different patterns. You've got kind of a braided look on this side and it's flat, and on the other side it's kind of a woven look and it is definitely more textured. So I am going to continue to work on my chain here. And then when I get a fair bit of length, I'm going to just measure to see if I have enough to wrap around this ornament. So I'm just going to quickly freehand it here. I'm not gluing anything into place. This is just to give me a rough idea if I have enough yet. So you can feel free and add a few more chains if you feel like you need just a few more. Now it is easy enough to pull those chains off if you feel you have too many. So as you can see right there, I had trimmed off my tail and I pulled it tight, and that locked everything into place. So you can see I am just measuring to show you how long I have, and I've got a total of 30 inches. So once your chain is long enough, you can start to add glue to your ornament and start to glue your chain into place. Now I am gluing the braided flat side down onto the ornament. You'll want to use quite a bit of hot glue for this project. So you want to make sure you don't get your tail in the way here. I just moved that out of the way. I just wanted to make sure I got this nice and tight around the top before I trimmed off that tail. So I had a little bit of excess glue there, so I decided I would trim off my tail and then I would tuck that end into place into that excess glue, and that helped hold it all together. Feel free to add a dab of glue if you feel your piece needs it. So I'm just going to continue to generously add my hot glue and continue to wrap my ornament with this chain of jute twine. Again, you could use other string as well. It doesn't have to be jute, but we're going for that rustic look, and I am really loving how this is looking so far. So I'm coming to the end, and I end up finding out that I actually have too long of a chain. I think what was happening was you know what, I don't even know what happened here, but I just misjudged how much I needed. So I'm just gonna pull the tail out, and that will release any of those knots and chains that we created. And I'm just going to add a bit of glue, and I'm measuring it until I got the right length, which actually worked out really good. So as you can see, I trimmed off that tail and added a bit of glue and pressed that all into place, and that is it for covering up this ornament. It looks so cool. Now I want to create my hanger. I did a loop and tied a knot, and I'm going to poke that through the hole, and I added just a bit of hot glue right there. That helped hold it in place. So you can leave it as is. I think it looks awesome. So cool. But I decided I wanted just another little added touch, so I just created a simple bow, nothing fancy. Again, this is optional. You can decorate it any way you'd like, but I want to keep this one really simple. glued that into place and it's all ready to go. I think it looks amazing. I'm definitely making more of these for my tree. So now I'm moving on to laser cutting. I've moved my machine out into the garage and I have uploaded this 3mm basswood into the machine, and I've chosen this really pretty ornament design. There's 3 of them, and I'm going to be cutting out some ornaments for a friend. So I'm going to just move the images into place on the wood. Everything else is the same as far as inserting your images and whatnot, but the difference here is that we are using the flat laser setting. I'm choosing the 3mm basswood as my material, and then I'm going to highlight each image, and I am choosing cut, as we are going to do some laser cutting. So I'm going to follow all the prompts, and you must ventilate. So this does have a ventilation system, and I put that out into our garage underneath the door. And what's awesome, oh, come see, hun. What's really cool is that you don't need to wear protective eyewear because of this screen.
No way.
So I must say, it was really fun to see our very first project cutting with the laser cutter. This does a phenomenal job. It is really detailed. I was blown away. So here are the 3 ornaments that I had chose to cut out for my friend. And again, the detail, it was mind-blowing. I like to let the air clear once it's done before I open the lid. And then they're done. So I've removed them from the machine, and now I'm using some rubbing alcohol and just a paper towel, and I'm removing any maybe soot that may be left behind. This works really, really well, and it evaporates very quickly. So to decorate them, I'm just using some ribbon trim that I had, and I'm just keeping this very simple. I just have a very simple loop for the hanger, and then I am just creating a simple little bow around the top. You could paint these if you'd like, but I don't know. I really like the natural wood color of these ornaments. So I decided to add just a little dab of hot glue just underneath the bow, just to help to hold that in place and prevent it from falling apart. And here they all are, and now we're going to package them up in this pretty organza bag. I just wanted to leave this very simple so that the ornaments are the star of the show. They fit in this little bag nicely, and I just again tied a simple bow, and then it's ready to give away as a gift to my friend. For this project, I am going to be using this Pinecone. It's a ponderosa pine Pinecone. I've got some Spanish moss and a branch. I am using a branch that's got lots of little forks jutting out from it. I'm going to cut it down to size. As you can see, I am wanting it to fit on the top of this pine cone. So I needed to cut it down so it fit really well on top. I did forage both the branches and the pine cone for this project. I'm going to attach this all together using a glue gun. So you want to generously apply some glue at the touch points between the branch and the pine cone. I will be holding the branch in place till the glue sets. In the meantime, I'm just adding a few other extra little pieces to create a really nice natural look. Now, once the glue is set, I'm adding some additional glue over top just to help make sure that it's nice and secure. I decided I'm going to use a tin can here that my pine cone fits in. That way here I can be hands-free for this next part. I want to create a nest on the top of this, so I'm just going to wrap this Spanish moss in and around the branch on top of the pine cone. Now I actually do have another tutorial on creating bird's nests that you can use for the Christmas tree. So I'm going to have that link down in the video description box, as well as some other Christmas in July DIYs that you may want to check out. So I'm just going to continue to add the moss and making sure that it's all intertwined around the branch like you would actually see out in nature. You know how birds intertwine the grasses and whatnot. I have got this cute little bird. I would have preferred a red cardinal, but this is all I had in my stash, so I decided just to use this cute little guy. Use some glue and put that in place. Now I'm going to be using this faux evergreen, and I'm just trimming it down into smaller, more manageable pieces, and I'm going to glue that into place and have it poking out from the nest. Just a little tip for you, I actually get those trees from Dollar Tree, those little tabletop trees, and I use the greenery off of that for different ornaments and arrangements that I make for the Christmas season. So it's a really affordable way, and you get a lot of greenery to use for different crafts. So I'm just going to continue to add those little branches, and then I am now going to use this frosted flocked greenery that I picked up from Michael's at the end of the season. That is a great time to pick up a different greenery, and then you can just put it aside and save it for the following year. So I'm just going to cut it down into, again, a more usable size for this piece. And I will be using hot glue. And again, I'm just going to have it poking in through the nest to make it actually look like it's growing in a tree. I have recently did some garden inspired ornaments as well. I'm going to have that video linked down in the video description too, if you like more of a gardeny look rather than more of a nature rustic look. But I'm telling you, I think this is turning out so cute. I really like this. So here's another little bit that I had forged. It's these tiny little pine cones. I'm going to just snap them off, and again, using my hot glue gun, I'm going to tuck them in around the branches and the nest. You could add little berries or some ornaments. Some little bells would be cute too if you want a bit more of a really Christmassy touch. But I don't know, I'm thinking these little tiny pine cones tucked in there look so cute and is perfect for nature-inspired crafts. So I did decide to use these little faux berries that I had. They came off of another faux leaf bush that I had, and they're kind of like a really delicate green color, so I thought that they would be actually a really pretty touch. Dollar Tree has pip berries on a garland. Those would be really pretty tucked in around here as well. Just dig into your stash of some supplies and see what you can find, or check out craft stores and dollar stores. I actually really like to try and get things that is just everyday items and craft with those, such as this bird here. I'm attaching some jute twine to create my hanger, and I'm tying it on either end of the branch. But before I fully commit to the opposite side, I am going to make sure that it's balanced, that I'm tying it in the right spot on the opposite side. And then I will tie it on, and I will add just a little dot of hot glue to help secure the knot onto the branch, as well as prevent the knot from coming apart. I love to craft with pine cones. I would like to know the different types of crafts that you have made by dropping me a little comment down in the comment section below. I think this turned out so cute, and again, I'm going to have another bird's nest tutorial for you down in the description box to check out. In the springtime, I had these little peat pots that I got from the dollar store, and I had covered them with birch bark that I had foraged. I decided I wanted to turn one into a Christmas ornament. I'm using an awl to poke a hole on each side, and this opposite from each other, and that will create a hole where I can put my twine in to create a hanger. A little tip, I like to add some tape on the end. That helps the twine to thread through a lot more easily without having to thread it onto a needle. So I'm just going to pull that through, and then I'm going to tie a knot off on the one end, and then I'm going to pull it tight on the inside. That way here the knot is hidden. Of course, do this hanger any way that you'd like. I am going to make sure that it's really nice and long, and then I'm going to thread the other side. At this point, I wasn't sure how long I would actually need this, so that's why I made it extra long, so it would hang longer than what we actually are going to need. I pulled that knot tight once I had it in place. I'm adding a little bit of hot glue on either side of the inside and pulling the knots into that glue. That will help to hold those knots and prevent them from coming apart. I had this little scrap of dry floral foam that I'm going to use. I'm adding some hot glue and I'm just going to put that into place into the little peat pot. And now I'm going to be using this preserved reindeer moss. I love using preserved reindeer moss, especially in this pretty green color. You can get this at craft stores as well as dollar stores. You can even get it online. I'm just using some hot glue and my scissors, and I'm going to press it down in around the foam, but I'm being careful not to cover up my foam too much at this point. I love using bottle brush trees for my Christmas crafts, so I thought it would be cute to create a little forest scene in this little peat pot. So I'm just removing the bases off of these bottle brush trees. I'll get them from dollar stores, craft stores. I usually pick them up at the end of season at Michael's when they are on clearance. So just again, keep that in mind. So I tested the tree out, this bigger one out on the foam, and I discovered it didn't go down in far enough. So I trimmed off a little bit of the branches, and then using some hot glue and removing the bases off all of our little trees, I'm putting them into place on the foam. This tiny one is actually from Dollar Tree, and I like the color contrast and the texture contrast between them all. Again, that's like a cute little forest scene right there that you would actually see in nature where all the trees are different. I'm adding a little bit more of this moss just to make sure that the foam is all covered up. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some of those little pine cones that I had foraged. I thought it would be a really nice natural touch to this forest scene. A little bird tucked in there, a little woodland critter would be really cute. You can add some faux snow if you'd like, anything to decorate this, again, to make a cute little wintry woodland forest scene. So once you have everything in place, you can test out your hanger to see if it is too long or maybe it's long enough. And then you can cut through the loop and you can then adjust it and tie it off accordingly so then you have the length that you need. So mine here is just way too long, so I did have to snip it and then I tied a knot off where I actually did feel it was the right height. So you can see me doing that right here, just a simple little knot, and then it's ready to be hung on the tree. I'll have the tutorial on how I covered this little peat pot down in the description below. So I had a few people request that I do pinecone crafts, so I'm showing another one. Here I'm again using a ponderosa pinecone, but this is a smaller one. I am using my wire snips because it's got a nice pointy end, and I'm cutting into the middle because I wanted to remove the pointy end of this pinecone. It does take a little bit of muscle work and a little bit of wiggling. If you have another suggestion on how to do this, please leave that in the comments section, because I admit I struggled a little bit with this, but I did manage to cut through it and it popped off. Now I'm just going to clean up some of the debris, and then here you're left with the base of the pinecone. I got these little stumps from my local dollar store, and I am going to just pick one out that I feel looks best as a stem underneath this mushroom cap. That's right, we are creating a cute little mushroom ornament, and I thought that this would look so good together, a great nature-inspired craft. I'm using twine again because it's a nice natural looking string, but if you don't like twine, then please use anything that you like. I'm adding a dollop of hot glue to the top of the pinecone, and I'm going to push the knot down into that glue, and that will help to just secure that knot, and you've got a great hanger. Next, I'm adding glue to the underside of our pinecone mushroom cap, and I'm adding our little branch, and I'm going to hold it till the glue sets. I decided I'm going to add just a little touch of moss underneath. I wanted a bit of that nice pretty green contrast, and that also helps hide any of the mess that I may have made from cutting the pinecone, as well as any of the hot glue that may have squeezed out from the stem. I am also going to add just a little bit of the moss to the bottom of the stem. You know how when you are out in nature, when you're looking at mushrooms, they're kind of dirty on the bottom, and they are often growing up out of grass or moss. And I thought it would be kind of a more natural look if I added just a little bit. So you can see I'm just taking my glue gun, the nozzle, and I'm kind of going up and down just a little bit just to create a bit of variation around the base of the stem, just to create a bit more interest. But that's it. It was so easy and fun to make. I made these dried orange slices last Christmas. So again, I will have that video tutorial for you down in the description box below. I have a selection of some dry elements that I had foraged, as well as grabbed out of my kitchen cupboard. I grabbed these dried florals from my front yard. I'm taking my awl and I'm just poking a hole through the top of the orange slice. And then I'm taking my jute twine and I'm going to fold it in half, put the fold line through the hole, and then you'll have a little loop on the one side and pull the tails through that loop. You want to tie the two tails into a knot at the top, and then you've got a nice little hanger. I think it looks great. So now I'm going to start to decorate the front of our orange slices. Again, I've got a different selection of some like dried elements. I have little pieces of birch bark. I have this star anise that I got from my kitchen cupboard. I also have some dried pearly everlasting. I had that pressed in my flower press. I also have some moss, faux evergreens, branches. All you want to do is just start to, before you glue everything down, layer it up to come up with a design that you like, and then you can start to glue things into place. That's how I typically do it. If you're confident in your design, then of course start to glue right away. Sometimes it takes me a little bit, so I like to lay everything out to give me an idea of how this is going to look, and then I will go ahead and start to glue everything into place. So I usually like to use some really good quality faux evergreens as well, so keep that in mind when you're creating stuff like this as well. I have this dried pepper that I had grown along with some some preserved reindeer moss. So I'm going to combine those two. I thought it would be a nice contrast, especially for a Christmas ornament. Again, I'm just using my hot glue to put it all together. This one is really simple. Now I'm using more preserved reindeer moss along with some of the dried seed pods that I had from my front yard. And I'm also going to be using some foraged branches, pine cones. Just use whatever you have that is a really nice and natural look for these ornaments. I think they turned out beautiful. They would not only look good on a Christmas tree, but it would also look great on a package. You can make a set of these and give them away as a gift. I think these are great, and they're very, very affordable. These would make a really great Christmas craft for kids to make as well. I can't wait to hang these up in my tree at Christmas time. They turned out better than I had hoped. For this project, you're going to need a selection of some branches, and you want them to be fairly straight. I'm going to be measuring one that is around 6 inches and another one at around 4 inches. And as you can see, I am creating a cross. The Advent season is a really important time to my family, but so is Easter. And I thought this would be a great way to commemorate both. So as you can see, I glued the two sticks together, and now just for some added strength and stability, I'm using some crochet twine or string, but you can use anything that you have that you like. Embroidery floss would be pretty as well. And as you can see, I tied it on, and now I am wrapping it around the cross section, and that will really give it a lot of strength. I'm now just going to tie it off with a simple knot, and then you can trim off the excess. So I have a large selection of some different tags, and I just wanted to show you the different types that I have here. I've got wood ones and craft paper. You can get all different colors and types. I'm just going to show you here as well what each type would look like. I really like the craft paper, and I decided to go with the smaller one out of this selection. So I wanted to stamp out the words that go with each Advent theme: joy, love, hope, and peace. They may be slightly different for you, and that is fine. Just adjust accordingly. And I had just some words that already had joy and love, but then I went into my peg stamps and spelled out the other words that I needed. I also wanted to add just a little bit of a decorative touch, so I'm just going into my stash of stamps and finding some Christmas greenery, and I'm going to be using black ink and just stamping onto the tag as needed. Now I am going to have some links for you if you want to know more about the Advent season, and I hope this is a beautiful and blessed time for you if you celebrate. So now I decided that I wanted to ink up the edges, so I'm just running my ink pad all around the edge, just like you saw there. And now I'm just going to allow that to dry a little bit, and then I'm going to get my string. Again, I'm going to be using the crochet string again, and I'm going to tie my little tag onto the cross. I did a knot first because I found that it kind of didn't hang quite right. So when I was kind of playing around with this, you can see here I was fiddling around and I just didn't like the way that was hanging. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna tie a knot first, and that just kind of provided some stability around the tag without it kind of flopping around on the string. Next, I then tied the string around the cross section, and again, I just tied a knot. So I just thought that this was a beautiful way to remember the Advent season and remember what Christ had done for us. So to do that though, I need to attach a hanger. So my plan was to add one to the tree each weekend as we celebrate the Advent season. So for the hanger, I've just folded my string in half, and then I'm going to tie the two strands and make a knot. I'm just adjusting the knot accordingly so that I know it's long or short enough for a hanger. I'm adding just a dollop of hot glue on the top of the stick and then pressing the little knot in place, and then it's ready to be hung on the tree. I also included one tag for Christ. So I grabbed an assortment of some different fabrics and I cut them down into strips. As you can see, these have got kind of a vintage romantic feel to them. I made sure that I removed any of those excess threads from those torn fabric strips. So this particular piece of lace is actually from somebody's dress that they had taken apart. So this is the sleeve. I needed to just trim off any of the seams that they had. And then I continued to cut this particular piece down into some strips that were around the same width as the other strips of fabric that I already had cut down. All right, so here's my pile of fabric. I'm just continuing to go through all of these pieces and removing all those excess threads. So all my fabric strips are all ready to go. So now I'm going to start to lay them out to randomly mix them together so that they are interspersed throughout. I am going to just pile them all up, and then I'm going to decide on how thick I want my bundle to be. All right, so here I'm just gonna gather them all up and I'm gonna fold it in half. I just again wanna see how thick this is gonna be. I am creating a tassel and I don't want it to be too thick, and there's a reason why, and I'll show you that in a bit. So I'm just removing some of the bulkier fabrics and then I'm gonna test it out again, and I'll continue to do this until I'm happy with what I have. So I decided I want a little bit more texture, so I grabbed this bag of some scrap trims that I had. This is like a scrap piece of yarn. I love the little glittery pieces in it, but it would be a fun wintry touch. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut a few strips of those and include it in my fabric bundle. Of course, you can add anything that you would like to create something beautiful for your Christmas tree. Once you are happy with how thick it is, you can use a string to tie your bundle together in the middle. I'm just adjusting my fabric straps a bit just so that they're facing the right way. I do end up changing that up a bit because I ended up flipping once I tied it, but I'll show you that here in a moment. I am using jute twine, but of course use any type of string that you would like to use for your tree. So I'm just going to tie this off with a basic knot, and here you can see I'm just flipping those fabric straps or fabric scraps around just so they're facing the right way so I can see those beautiful colors. So here I'm just tying the knot off. So I was actually inspired by my friend Helen over at Moss Cottage. She created one of these beautiful tassels as well, but she used hers as a charm for a journal. I'm going to have her video linked for you down below so you can check out her tutorial if you're at all interested in seeing how to turn this into a charm. But her and I, we were on the same page. We thought these would make beautiful Christmas ornaments. I have done a tassel before, but I did it in a different way. But I thought this was so much easier. So I went into my stash of beads because that's what she had done. And I am just going to find one. As you can see, this one's got a really large hole. So I needed that to kind of fit over the top of my tassel a bit. So I eliminated a little bit more fabric, but I decided to make sure that my piece stays together really well, and I added a dab of hot glue. Next, I continued to add some other beads. I've got this smaller one. This slips right over that hole of that large bead really well. And then I added one more small one, and I really like the 3 different sizes. I think that it adds a lot of interest. So of course you can add any number of beads that you'd like. Once you're happy with that, you can tie a knot off, and you want your knot to be really close to the top of the beads so they're nice and tight. And then I went maybe about an inch or so higher and I tied another knot, and that created the hanger for our ornament. All right, so some of my strands were a little too long, so I'm just trimming them off. And I also wanted to cut them on an angle. That'll just help to prevent them from fraying any further. And then that is it. It's all ready to be hung on the tree. I've got this clear plastic Christmas ornament from my stash. I picked it up from the local dollar store years ago. And I have an assortment of some different patterns and color of scraps. I am cutting them down into small squares. I'm gonna guess approximately 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. Honestly, I didn't measure. I just started to cut, and it's okay if they are all uneven. And I like to scrunch up some of the fabrics because they were quite stiff, and so that'll just make it easier to decoupage. So yes, I am using my decoupage glue put out by DecoArt, but feel free to use any adhesive that you like. So I really like the matte finish, so I'm applying a layer to the plastic ornament, and I'm going to press my squares down into place. Remove any of those excess strands of threads that come off of your fabric strips. So I'm going to just continue to cover the ornament, randomly placing the little pieces of fabric all over. You just want to make sure you have good coverage underneath and then put more over top. I have seen some people dilute their glue. You can totally do that, but my glue was actually behaving really well with the fabric, so I didn't need to do that. Now I do end up changing one thing, but I will show you that here in a bit. So I have my ornament all covered, but I didn't like how those white patches were. They were just a little too bright. So I'm going back in and covering up those patches with some coffee dyed fabric that I had in my stash. And I think it looks so much better. So once you have that all done, you want to set it aside and allow it to dry. And then that is when I also decided that I'm like, I don't like the shiny top of the ornament. So I am covering it up with this Whisper chalk paint. Feel free to use anything that you have. Now, I should have added a coat of some gesso first. I find that paints adhere to plastics better when you do that. But of course you could use spray paint as well. That works good as well. Or you could just leave it alone. I decided I wanted to paint mine. So everything is all dry. Now I decided that I wanted to distress the ornament top. So I'm using some potting soil, archival ink. It's a permanent ink, and I'm just going to brush some on the ornament top, and then I allow that to dry. All right, everything is dry, and now I wanted to add just a little bit more of a whimsical touch. I'm adding a strip of some coffee dyed fabric, and I'm creating a bow. Now, of course, you can decorate your ornament any way you'd like. If you just want to tie on a simple bow with some jute twine, that would be great, or add some greenery or berries. I think that would be beautiful. But I like the simplicity of this. I think it looks really, really beautiful. It definitely has a country primitive farmhouse look to it. I think it's just gorgeous. So I'll just trim it off, and then I'm going to use some jute twine to create a hanger, and then it'll be all ready for our Christmas tree. Or this would make a beautiful gift if you created a set of 3 or more. This next ornament is super easy. You're going to need a selection of some lace scraps and a selection of some ornaments. These are plastic. And I'm going to show you how to do the complete one using the clear ornament and this white lace. You'll need to pre-cut some string as well. So I'm just cutting my lace down to size so it will fit around our ornament. You want to make sure you keep those scraps, of course, so I set those ones aside. Next, I'm gathering the lace up around the top of the ornament, and then I'm going to take the string and tie it off. I do wrap the string around a couple of times because I wanted to try and get this nice and tight, and then I just tie it off in a knot. So you can see that we can access the little ornament topper still. Next, I am just going to trim off any of the excess fabric at the top to create a really pretty ruffled look. And then you are going to need to gather up some scrap trim if you have it on hand. I dove into my little stash that I had, and I chose a selection that I thought would be so pretty for this ornament. I wrapped it around just underneath that ruffle, and I tied a really simple bow, and I left the tails kind of long. I really liked that look. Next, I just used another scrap of some trim that I had, and I created a little hanger for our ornament. Just need to pull back the ruffles and then string it through, tie a knot, and it's ready to go. I'm going to just show you a couple other little styles that I created quickly here. I had this beautiful light teal lace. It's actually from one of my daughter's old tops. I think it's beautiful over the silver. And this lace looks gorgeous over the gold. I love how that looks, very effective. And here they all look together, ready to be hung on the tree. I love the woodland look, and I found a really cool technique that I will have a link to down in my description box. Somebody made these mushrooms and they used styrofoam balls as the top. So I am going to cut this 2-inch ball in half. Use any size that you have in your stash. I'm using this metal lid from a candle, and it is 4 inches in diameter. Now you just need to adjust the size to fit around whatever styrofoam ball you're using. So I traced around this with a black pen, and then I'm going to use my scissors to cut it out. This ornament was actually inspired by something that I had seen on Pinterest. All right, so next you're going to need some needle and some thread. As you can see, I doubled up on my thread, and then I have a nice large knot so it doesn't pull through. And then you're going to do a simple running stitch around the edge of your circle. We want to create a little pouch. I do have another tutorial on how I have made some mushroom ornaments. I will have that video linked down for you down below. It's an old one, but it is so cute. It's definitely a must-see. So continue to stitch around the edge until you get to the other end. I did start and finish on the inside. So here's our little pouch. I snipped the strings off so they remained nice and long so I can still tie them off. You want to slip your foam round inside the little pouch and just adjust the fabric around it, and then you'll want to pull your strings tight and then tie a knot tight. I think this is coming together really well. Now this fabric has frayed a little bit, so I'm going to show you how we can just make sure that that doesn't happen. The golden yellow one is actually a smaller one, and I love how that one looks as well. You can do these in so many fun and whimsical colors. So here I've got a nice sturdy cotton fabric, and I'm just cutting out a little circle. You could use some felt fabric as well. And then you're going to take your hot glue gun and you're going to generously apply some hot glue to the center and just around the edge, just to help prevent that fabric from fraying. So I wanted to make sure that the fabric stuck to the center, so I just pushed it in just a little bit. And then you can go to your dollar store or out in the forest and get some branches. I got these from my local dollar store. I like the little nubs that they have, and it's nicely cut off. It's nice and flat. I also thought these would make great mushroom stems. Aren't these fun? And it's in perfect style to what I do here on my channel, that nature-inspired woodland look. I love it. So I just added some hot glue and then chose the stump that I wanted and applied it to the bottom of our mushrooms. Now you got to remember, mushrooms come in all different shapes and sizes and colors. All right, so these are straight pins. You can find these in the jewelry section, and I also have just some thread needles. And I'm using that to poke a hole in the top as we're creating an ornament hanger. So this eye hook is about 1 inch long. It fits really well into the larger mushroom. And I just added some hot glue and pushed that into place. And then for the smaller one, I'm using an eye hook that's about 3/4 of an inch. And same thing, I just added hot glue and then push it down into the foam. And then there you have a nice little ornament hook. Next, I am just going to be using some thread. This is embroidery thread, and I'm going to just tie it off to create a hanger. Oh, I'm loving these so much. I'm definitely making more. I'm going to dive into my velvet stash to create some velvet mushrooms as well. All right, I'm sharing another Pinterest inspired ornament. I had this quilt backing, and I also had this cotton fabric, a selection of cotton fabrics. These two are quilting fabrics. You can see that this one's torn a little bit. And then I also had a scrap of felt that I had started a project on and it was a fail. So I kept it though. I knew I could reuse this piece. So this is the quilt backing. I am just going to lay my pieces together. I'm creating like a sandwich of sorts. So I've got my felt, my quilt backing, and then this sturdy cotton fabric that I am going to be laying on top. I'm trimming down my quilt backing first. I wanted to even out all the edges because they were quite uneven. And I'm creating a rectangle shape right now. So I'm going to take this thicker cotton fabric and I am going to be trimming that down as well, just a little bit. I am going to be creating a roof peak. That's right, a roof peak. So I'm cutting off the triangles on at the top of each corner, just like you see I'm doing right here. And then I'm going to lay my quilt backing down and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm not going to worry about this being perfect, like for the quilt backing, but I did try to match up my cuts for the cotton fabric. So I'm going to just continue to trim this down as needed. As you can see, I did leave a little bit of an edge all the way around. So once you've got that all cut down to size, you'll want to glue your quilt backing onto your whatever fabric you're using. Of course, I'm going to be using this nice sturdy cotton fabric. Glue that into place all the way around. So once you have those two pieces glued together, next you're going to want to lay that on top of your felt, and then you want to cut your felt out, but we're not going to glue this all together just yet. I'll show you that here in a bit. All right, so now for our pattern fabric. I'm using this green one and I'm just lining it up onto the roof peak, just like you see here. I'm flipping it over. And then I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to just trace out the roof line. Then I'm going to use my fabric scissors to cut it out. Next, I will be grabbing that really pretty floral pattern fabric. It kind of reminds me of primitive country farmhouse. I think it's so pretty. So I'm just going to cut that down, and I created a little door shape, just in a rectangular shape, and I'm just trimming it up to make sure all the sides are even. Lay that down into place to make sure that I have the right size for this piece. All right, so now I dug into my stash of embroidery floss, and I chose this brown color. I unraveled a long section and then I got my needle and I threaded it on, and I made sure I tied a really good knot on the opposite end. So I am going to stitch this on, our roof on. You could glue it down or you could use a sewing machine instead, but I wanted that hand-stitched look. So I'm just going to do a basic running stitch all the way around the edge. Okay, so I have the roof all stitched down. Now I'm just going to tie off a basic knot. I am not a professional embroidery artist here, but you can just see that you can create a really, really beautiful effect by doing some hand stitching. And if you make a mess, it's okay. This is all going to be covered up. So next I am going to be stitching the door on as well. Same technique, and I'm using the same color of embroidery floss. All right, so the door and the roof are all stitched. Next, I am doing some windows. Now, I didn't use any fabric for the windows. I just decided to create the window shape by using stitching. So I'm just going to create a basic square shape using the running stitch. I just eyeballed this. I don't have any measurements, but feel free to measure everything as needed if you feel that you need that. So once you've got your square all stitched out, I went back to the middle of the top, and now I'm going down the center of our window. I'm creating that window frame. Next, I just crossed up on an angle, crossed down on an angle, and now I'm going to stitch across the other way to create that T shape. So I do the same thing on the opposite side. Of course, that is optional. You could just do one window if you'd like. All right, so the original that I had seen, they did some beautiful embroidery work on the side right here. I decided that I wanted to create a tree. Now remember, I have no idea what I'm really doing, so I'm just kind of winging it. So I did a straight stitch up with my brown, and now I'm doing just some random seed stitching to create the trunk of a tree. So I was just kind of filling it in just a little bit. I did still want that random stitched look, so I didn't fill it in completely, but there are lots of tutorials on how to do embroidery. So if you're wanting to create a different look, then I highly suggest that you do a search to see all the different stitches that you can do. So I'm going to just continue to stitch my trunk using the seed pattern, which is just random stitches. As I get to the bottom, I did end up fanning it out to create the thicker base like an actual tree. So I'm really happy with how that looks. So now I'm going to go ahead and now start adding the evergreen portion. Now the first few stitches, I did make sure that they were kind of pointing down towards the ground like an actual tree would. And then again, I started to do some seed stitching to create some random looking branches, just like an actual tree. If you yourself do embroidery, then please feel free to leave any suggestions down in the comments section for myself or for others. But I do a little bit of embroidery, and this is something that I have done, which is again the seed stitch. It's really easy. Again, it's just random stitches. Now I did put some intent to this. I wanted it to actually look like a tree. So I'm actually really pleased with how this ended up turning out. Another suggestion would be to add an applique or maybe some other decoration, but again, I'm really happy with that turned out. So I am going to be stitching around the edge, but I end up making a mistake, and I will show you that here in a minute. But I first wanted to attach my ornament hanger. So I'm just using this trim that I had in my stash, and I'm just going to glue that into place at the top. So at this point, I am going to be gluing all my knots down to make sure everything stays in place and nothing will unravel on me. This of course is optional. Now this is where I messed up. I ended up gluing my felt to my base and I wanted to do that stitching first. I forgot that I wanted to do that stitching, but I'm like, well, it's too late now. So I did not glue right up to the edge. As you saw, I was gluing on the quilt backing first. So I'm like, well, okay, I still have some room to do my stitching around the edge, thankfully. So I went ahead and did that. It was a little trickier to do it this way. So if you are going to be stitching like this, then I highly recommend that you do it before you glue all your pieces together like I started to do. So as you can see, it worked out just fine. I'm happy with how it looks. So now we can finish gluing all the edges down. So I'm just going in with my glue gun nozzle and I'm adding just enough glue and I'm gently pressing it down just so it doesn't ooze out. And just be careful that you don't burn your fingers here. My glue gun is a lower temp glue gun, so I don't typically have any issues with this, but if you're unsure, then definitely use those finger protectors. Those finger protectors do not fit my fingers, so I didn't use them. So now I'm adding a button. I thought it would be really cute to add a little doorknob. Love that, turned out so cute. And again, I'll have the link to my inspiration down in the description box below. And here is a recap of all the ornaments we made together today. I am using these ornament designs that I got from designbundles.com, but I only use a total of 6. So I've already put the settings in my machine. It's in the creative space, laser flat, 3mm balsam plywood, and I needed to cut these. Now the Xtool M1 is a hybrid machine, as I mentioned before, so it can laser cut, laser engrave, and blade cut. So I'm loving how these nature-inspired ornaments cut out. I was so blown away by the detail. I'm gonna really enjoy having these on my table for Christmas. So I wanted to back these with some scrapbook paper that have a snowflake pattern. So I'm just gonna decide on which I want on which paper. I am just going to lay out the different designs on the paper just to see what I like. Now I'm just going to show you how to apply the ornament to the paper. So I'm using my precision tip glue again, and I'm going all over the back of the ornament, and I'm making sure I'm getting those tiny little details as well. Next, I'm just using my finger and I'm spreading the glue out, and then you're going to want to press the ornament face down, like the glue side down, onto the right side up of your paper, just like I am right here. Gonna allow the glue to set, and then I'm going to use my scissors just to cut out each individual ornament, just to make it easier to trim off all the excess paper. Now, to remove the excess paper, I'm using a cutting mat and a utility blade, and I'm just going around, butting the knife right up against the edge, and I'm removing the excess. Now you could use like a sanding block or something like that to remove excess, but I didn't want to remove the staining that occurred around the edge. So all our ornaments are ready to go. I'm going to add a little punch through the hole so we can put a string to hang our ornaments. Now I am going to actually use these as some little place setting. So I'm just going to cut a strand, fold it in half, pull that loop through the hole and then pull the strands through the loop and then tie a knot at the top, and that makes a great hanger for an ornament. So I felt like it needed just a tiny bit more detail, so I'm just going to add a little bow on the top. Now, the machine can engrave, so I could have put like the date or say somebody's name underneath there where the bear is, but I decided to leave that just blank because I wasn't sure who's all showing up. And plus I couldn't do that with the snowflake version. So I'm just going to add a little touch of hot glue here just to hold the bow down. And you could add something to the back of the ornament if you'd like, but I decided to leave mine plain. So I'm going to give you a snapshot of what all our different ornaments look like. I found these wood slices from Dollar Tree, and I'm taking a selection of some craft paints and I am going to fill them in just up until the line of the bark layer. Now, of course, feel free to use any colors that you love to use for your Christmas decor. I wanted to try something a little different, so I'm using this beautiful antique gold, and then I'll also be using forest green, a cream color, and I left one plain. Next, you're going to need some eye hooks, and I like to use a nail, and I kind of pierce through the bark, and that provides a hole for a guide so I can screw these in just using my hand. Now, of course, you could use a drill or whatever other tools that you have. Now, I found the smallest size eye hook that my hardware store had. So these laser cut pieces are new to Dollar Tree. They are from the Crafter Square brand, and I thought they would be beautiful to use on these wood slices. So I'm using some tacky glue, and I'm just adding little dabs of that here and there on the back side, just to provide some contact between the laser piece and the wood slice. Just gonna place them down on top, and then you'll want to set it aside and allow these to dry. Feel free to use any of the glue that you love to use. So here they are, all nice and dry, and now all I'm going to do is add a twine to the eye hook, and then they are ready to hang. But first I wanted to share another option with you. Here I've got a larger wood slice and I've already painted it. I decided to try some moss on here. So again, I'm using my tacky glue and I'm just going to spread that around with a craft stick. And then you'll want to take this preserved reindeer moss and kind of spread it out a little thin and place that into the glue. I know Dollar Tree has this moss as well, but you can get this anywhere. Same with the wood slices. You can even get some wood slices that have a pre-drilled hole. That would be a great option as well. So once you have your moss in place, you're going to want to flip it upside down and apply a bit of weight to this and allow that glue to set. Then I'm just removing any of the excess pieces. And then I'm adding more glue to the opposite side, and same procedure. I'm going to spread the glue around, apply the moss, apply some weight to this, and allow it to dry. So I'm just going to trim this a little bit. I felt it was just a little bit too fluffy. I added a little bit too much moss. I'm just trimming it up a little bit. If you didn't apply enough moss, then feel free to add some more. All right, so now time for our little laser cut embellishment. I've got this beautiful maple leaf. I'm just going to apply that. And I did both sides for all of these wood slices. So again, apply some weight, allow it to dry, and then they're ready to be hung on the tree. I found these cute little wooden mushrooms in the Crafter Square fall decor and craft section. Of course, you can get these on Amazon as well, so I definitely would check that out. I'm going to give these a coat of some walnut gel stain as well as some cream paint. So I'm applying the gel stain to the top of the mushrooms, and you'll need a rag to wipe off any of the excess. Of course, feel free to paint these any color you would like. Now you could use this or leave the stem just as is if you'd like, but I wanted to paint mine out a cream color. So I'm just going to paint the underside as well as the stem, and then I'm going to allow it to dry well. Okay, so these are all nice and dry and looking pretty cute. So now I'm using my cream paint and the end of a paintbrush, and I'm going to add some dots just like an actual toadstool would have. Again, you're going to let that dry, and you're going to do the same for both mushrooms. Aren't they looking so cute? Okay, this is optional. I'm using some archival ink in the potting soil color and using a stiff bristled brush, and I'm going to apply it to the bottom of our mushroom stems to make it look like it's dirt, like you actually went out to the forest and picked these. I thought that was a really pretty added touch. And then I'm going to dive into those eye hooks again, and same procedure as before. I'm using a nail to puncture through the top, just top layer, and that will give me a guide to screw these eye hooks into the top to provide myself an ornament hanger. Of course, use any tool in your stash to help guide that eye hook into your mushrooms. So these were the smallest eye hooks I could find. If I could find a smaller one, I would have used that for these mushrooms, but I thought I'd try to kind of camouflage this eye hook a little bit. So I decided to try adding just a little twine bow on this one. I thought it was okay. I don't think I would do that for all of them, but here's what that looks like in case you want to try that out. So then you just want to, again, add some jute twine. I just tied the two ends together to give myself a full loop to hang on the tree. I don't know about you, but I really have a thing for mushrooms this year. I think they are so fun and whimsical. Dollar Tree had these beautiful leaf LED lights that are battery operated, and I thought they were really, really cute. So you could definitely just use them as is if you like this orange kind of amber look. But I wanted to tone that down, so I am going to be taking these outside into my garage and spray painting them with these heirloom white Rust-Oleum satin paint. So I'm spray painting 4 strands, and I straightened them all out just to make it easier, and you can see how good that spray paint covered that leaf up. Now I'm going to just show you what they look like all lit up, and you can see how it toned down that bright orange. Here's the before and here is the after. I think these are gorgeous for a fun, whimsical tree. So again, I hit up the Crafter Square fall section, and I found some strands of wood beads. Now, of course, you can get your wood beads anywhere, but I thought this was a really affordable way to make a garland. So again, I'm using my colors selection for these, and you'll need a little bag, and I just pulled them off of the string and placed them in the bag. Now, I did end up getting some fibers in there, so I just pulled those out. And I also removed any of the wood beads that were defective. So again, I'm using my Forest Green by DecoArt, but feel free to use any colors that you'd like. You'll want to place them in the bag, and then you want to smush it out. Now, I should have squeezed more of the air out of the bag. It would have made it easier to spread the beads around. So definitely do that. You can see I just did that right there. And it makes it way easier to smush them around in the paint. Now, I added just a little bit more. You're going to have to experiment, but I did want them to be a little bit blotchy. I didn't want these ones to be fully covered because I wanted kind of like a more of a rustic look. So I made sure I didn't add too much. So I do the same for the antique gold, and now for the walnut stain, again, I apply that in the bag, but this time you're going to need a rag, dump, and a protected surface. You've got to have that protected surface. You'll want to dump the beads out onto the rag, and then you're going to just kind of take your rag, move it around to remove any of the excess stain. So I'm going to be using an old ice cream lid, and I'll dump those out and I'll set them aside to allow them to dry. Now I do the same for the other colors. These colors, some of the beads stuck together, so I went through them and broke them apart before they became like glue and stuck together forever. So I did that for all of them, and now I put all my wood beads into some containers. You can see how the green is kind of blotchy, and I also left some natural. Now I'm going to be using some jute twine, and I took a little bit of glue. This was recommended from a viewer. You add some to the tip, and that makes it easier to thread your beads. So again, I don't remember your name. I apologize, but thank you so much for that tip. Okay. Now I am figuring out my pattern for my wood beads. This is something that is totally optional. Get creative with your pattern. Thought this was too boring, so I decided to just kind of separate them and added an extra light bead. That way here I felt it broke up all the dark colors. So once you are happy with your pattern, you can start to string them on. Now I don't pre-measure my twine. I will just kind of start to string them, and once I figure I've got enough, I will actually take it and measure it on, say, my tree, my mantle, whatever I am using my wood bead garland on. And I'll show you that here in a moment. So you can see here I have roughly draped the beads, and I am happy with how those are. So I'm just going to show you how long this strand is. It ends up being a total of just over 5 feet long. So I'm going to just tie a loop on the one end. That will help you to hang it on whatever you're going to use this on. Now I want a bit of slack in my garland, so I don't tie everything up tight. I make sure that there is a couple inches on each end of the garland, and then it's ready to be used. I'll be showing everything here in a bit all together on a tree. So next I found these acorns again in the Crafter Square fall line, and I'm just going to be using my paint colors and painting the base. I'll be using the gel stain here as well on the bottom, and then I will be using my forest green on the top of our acorns. Once dry, again, I'm going to be using my little eyelet hooks my little eye hooks and poking a hole in the top and then just twisting those into place. So again, I've dove into my preserved reindeer moss again, and this time I am using hot glue to apply the moss to the top of our little acorns. Now you can skip this step for sure, but I don't know, I think it's just a really fun and whimsical look for this. So I am just going to cover the entire top, take some scissors and just trim it back just to bring back that acorn shape. So I have a total of 3 in each color, and then using some jute twine, I'm going to be tying the jute twine onto each acorn, but I want all my strings to be 3 different lengths to kind of create a tiered look. Once you're happy with the lengths of those, you're going to tie all the strings together, and then that will be what you use to hang on the branch. I'm going to be using these mini canvas boards that I had in my stash along with these cut apart scrapbook paper pieces. These fit perfectly on those little canvas panels. So I've got a selection of some garden inspired ones. There's like little seed packets and garden sayings. I'm just going to go through these all and decide on which ones I want to use. I fell in love with this one that says grow your garden. I think it would be perfect to hang on a tree. So I'm just going to be using my Fiskars paper trimmer and just cutting down. I find that this is the easiest way to get a precise cut. You can also use a ruler and a craft knife. Once I did have this particular piece cut out, I discovered that it was a little bit too long, so I did need to go in and just trim it up slightly. Make adjustments according to the size of your little canvas panel. And now it's ready to adhere to our panel, but I wanted to paint out the white edge. I decided to use some gold paint. I'm just going around the edge, and I'm also going to go around the edge on the front because I did see a little bit of the white showing, and I personally didn't want that particular look. Of course, use any color that you'd like or just leave it plain white. These are all nice and dry. Now I'm using some tacky glue and I'm going to just add some to the front of the panel. I like to use a plastic card to smooth it all out, and I like to use tacky glue. I just find that it works really well. I get really good adhesion. So I just spread that out, and I've got a little bit of wiggle room to move my little piece of paper on the front of the panel. And I always like to flip it upside down to allow it to dry. And that way here you can press it as well. I've got this little vintage seed packet scrapbook cut apart piece. I'm just gonna, again, just trim it down just a little bit so you can see just a faint little frame of the gold around this particular piece. Of course, decorate this up any way that you'd like. So I'm going to allow these to dry well, and then what I'm going to do is also cover the backside. This is something that I don't always do, but I kind of wanted to finish it off because I didn't like the raw wood on the back. So I'm just going to add another piece of scrapbook paper. I'm adding a bit of this glue that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I like that it had a really nice narrow nozzle on it. I applied a little too much, so I'm just going to remove some of it and just put it onto my other frame as you see me doing. And then I'm going to press it down onto the back side of the scrapbook paper that I'm using as my base on these little frames. So you can see that I didn't pre-cut that scrapbook paper. I decided that I wanted to do it this way instead. I thought I'd get a bit more of a precise cut, and then also I didn't have to like fiddle around with it and try to get it exactly on. Once it's dry, you can take a craft knife and then just cut it out around it, and it worked out really well. I think it looks so pretty. I decided I wanted to use one of these little eye hooks as my hanger, so I'm just finding the middle of the top of the frame, and then I like to just poke a little hole in it and then twist that little eye hook in. It works really, really easily. Of course, you can use a tool if need be, so I just added that there. So at this point, you can decorate these any way you'd like, or you can even leave them plain. I love to add branches to my pieces. I love to bring in nature and decorate with it. And I find branches are just so easy to use. So first I like to just figure out the length that I need my branches to be, and then I cut them down to size. I like branches that have got like little bits of lichen on it and some little nubs and little branches branching out, and I just like the different characteristics of it. So I'm just going to go through my little stash that I have. I had foraged these and allowed them to dry well. And if you're concerned about bugs, you can place these in an oven on a low heat to kill anything off. But these branches, I've only had a problem with them once, I think it was. And but yeah, that was about it. So again, I'm just going to trim these down and using some that have got a little bit of character, allowing them to overhang like you see me here. And I'm using my hot glue gun to put those into place. I'm going to use jute string, and I'm just going to create a simple little hanger just by creating a loop and then tying the two ends together with a knot. And I decided I wanted to add just a little bit of just a casual loose bow on the top around the eye hook, because I didn't want the eye hook to stand out so much. Again, if you've decorated it differently, then you can take that into account and decorate around it accordingly. I think these turned out great though. I think they'll look beautiful on a garden-inspired Christmas tree. I have these beautiful wood slices and napkins. The napkins have got these gorgeous garden flowers all over them, and I thought they would be perfect use for decoupage, for a garden-inspired ornament. So what I need to do is just paint one of these with some off-white craft paint. This is optional. I'm just showing you two ways on how you can do this. I'll be showing you one where the base is the off-white, and then the other one I'm just going to leave it in the raw wood. So these are, the one is all painted and ready to go. I also had added some eye hooks to it as well, just like I did for the little mini frames. So now I'm just using some tape to remove the backing off of the napkins. I had troubles with this one. I don't know, I was amazed at how well it stuck, especially since I got these napkins from a dollar store. But I did manage to pull it off eventually after a little work, but all I did was tear it down into a smaller, more usable piece. So I just figured out the pattern that I wanted on the wood slice, and then I am going to be using my DecoArt decoupage glue for this project. So here I'm just tearing these down, and you're gonna see the difference between the raw wood and the painted one once I've got it all sealed up. But first I'm just going to apply a layer of the decoupage glue to the wood slice, and I'm being careful that I don't get some directly on the bark. I wanted the bark to show, but of course feel free to do this whichever way you'd like. I just wanted that natural raw look to be exposed. So once I got some glue on, the decoupage glue, I'm going to press the napkin into the glue, just being very gentle because the napkin can tear. And then I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I'll do the other side as well. I haven't put a second coat on just yet. I am allowing the napkins to dry completely before I do my next layer of glue. So now I'm going to be doing the one with the wood slice, and as I was working on this, I'm like, wow, this is very absorbent, of course, because I don't have the paint on this one. So I did end up using a little bit more glue. But again, just had the glue on and then press the napkin into place, allow that glue to set up, and then you can move on to the other side. Okay, these are all nice and dry. I'm going to just tear the excess napkin away. Again, I just want that kind of rough, rugged edge showing. You'll also want to remove any of the loose bits that might be hanging off as well. And don't forget to tear off the excess on the other side of your wood slice as well. Okay, so my wood slices are all ready for the second coat. So I'm just going to go over it, and it's going to be more absorbent because you are going over paper, but you can see how on the white, the colors really pop against that. And then you're gonna see that once I do the natural wood here, the colors are more muted. And so I just wanted to show you both ways just so you can decide on what you would like to try out. So I'm going to just give one coat each on one side, allow it to dry, and then I'm going to flip them over and do the other side, and again allow them to dry. Here they are. You can see the difference between them here. One's really popping and the other one's more muted. I've got this gorgeous kind of organza ribbon that I had in my stash of ribbons. I'm just going to tie a simple hanger for this. And then I decided to add a bow. Again, I wanted to cover up the eye hook. I didn't really want that brassy color to be showing. I am wondering if any of you have done Christmas in July crafting before. I never did until I started doing YouTube. I have to say, I find it a lot of fun. So I'm just going to use some hot glue, just a little dab, add my bow to the top, and there you have a beautiful, simple, rustic garden ornament. So I'm going to show you another alternative for this project. I'm going to be using some washi stickers along with some clear stickers, and they've got some beautiful florals, and I already prepped my wood surface, and you can see how these just pop against that white. And the washi sticker, the white edge actually just fades out. So I'm just going to remove the backing. I ended up struggling a little bit, but we skipped over that part. So I'm just going to place the washi sticker down. I'm going to press it down really hard, but then I did have some overhang, so I needed to go back in and lift up the edge a little bit, and I just used some scissors to cut that. Afterwards, I realized that I perhaps should have used a craft knife to trim this off, but I just grabbed my scissors and trimmed it off. I trimmed off a little bit too much, but I still made it work. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just finish trimming up the rest of this. So now I'm going to be using my decoupage glue and going over it. This is a matte finish, so if you like a shiny one, then go ahead and use that. But I just gave it a coat, and I figured that way here this sticker will stick down really well. Now I am going to be using a clear sticker, and I trimmed it off ahead of time before I removed the backing and put it onto the wood slice. I think I still had a little bit of overhang that I needed to trim off, but I made it work. So I'm going to just put the sticker down, and again, you'll see how nicely the color just pops against that white background. I really like how these ones turned out. And I decided to go over it with my matte decoupage glue as well, because I wanted the finishes to be the same. So I was actually surprised at how well this decoupage glue stuck to the shininess of this particular sticker, and I'm loving it. It's just so pretty. So again, I'm using some organza ribbon. I've got this pretty pink one that matches the flowers really nicely. So same thing, just created a simple little hanger and a simple little bow and used my hot glue to attach that, and then it was all ready for the tree. So I was doing some experimenting with some nature crafts, and I really wanted to try flower pounding. So this is a little violet that I had pounded onto some watercolor paper. I'll have the original video for this linked for you down in my description box in case you want to check how to do this. But it's really easy. It's just watercolor paper, a pretty flower, and a hammer and hard surface. Now, I heard that it could brown, so you might want to seal it with some sealant or some decoupage glue, and then hopefully that will prolong the color. I'm not sure, but we'll see. So here's my flower, and I've got this really pretty thrifted frame that I had picked up, and it was all ready to go as an ornament. So it was a really easy project. I just put this little violet into the frame, and then all I had to do was add a pretty little bow. Again, I wanted to hide that eye hook. This one came with the eye hook already and the ribbon to hang, and I had some pretty organza that matched the ribbon that was already on there perfectly, so it worked out really well. This was a really quick and easy project, and I think it is going to look stunning on the tree. I've noticed Dollar Tree has been carrying these pretty grapevine heart wreaths for the last few years, and so I thought I would decorate one for the tree. So I'm just using some Dollar Tree florals and some pretty little white lace trim that I had, and I'm just going to create a simple little loopy bow, and I'm adding an extra tail, and I like to use some florist wire just to tie it off in the center, just to help hold all the gathers. I like to collect some different things throughout the year that I can use during Christmas, because I like to create all kinds of different styles of ornaments. So keep that in mind when you are out shopping at dollar stores seasonally, or even craft stores. So here I've got my bow all ready to go. So I'm just figuring out my placement, and I haven't glued it into place yet. So I'm also figuring out where I want to put my little hanger, and I had to tie a knot on it first before I actually tied the knot at the top to create the loop to hang. You can see how I did that right there, and now it's hanging nicely. So I decided to create just again another simple basic loopy bow. Just wanted to tie one up so I can cover up the knot where I had it tied onto the wreath. Any kind of ribbon would work well for this, but I wanted the romantic look of this pretty lace. So now I'm just going to, again, figure out the placement of everything. Now I'm just going to trim down these little scraps that I had of these florals. Dollar Tree has had these several years now, and I think they're just gorgeous. They're actually some of my favorites. I admit I am so particular when it comes to florals. So yeah, if you see these, definitely get them because they look quite realistic. They almost look like meadow flowers. All right, so now I'm just going to use some hot glue and start to put everything together. I put my bow into place, and you can see how everything's kind of offset, which I really like. And then using some hot glue again, I am going to add the florals as well. Dollar Tree also has these pretty little faux roses. These are the off yellow, the kind of yellow color, and I'm just trimming off the stem that was underneath, and again I'm just going to glue them into place. This is a great way to use those little scraps that we usually have laying around after a big project. Now I'm just going to add a few leaves as well, and this is just coming together so easily and so quickly. I think it just is so pretty and will look great on a tree for Christmas. I'm hoping to have like a little tree in my bedroom at Christmas time and be able to put these particular ornaments and other garden inspired ornaments that I have made in the past. I also decided to add a little bit of greenery at the top around the little loopy bow as well. So for this one, I'm taking a bit more of a modern approach to this garden ornament. I've got these really nice wood beads, and what I'm going to do is actually stack them. But I needed some jute rope and again those Dollar Tree florals, and I cut some down to size already. And with the jute rope, I decided, I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? So I took a really long strand and I folded it in half. And then that fold, I threaded that through my wood beads. I wanted to create a hanger at the top, and I thought this would probably be the best way to do that. And I also thought that stringing the beads would make it easier to adhere them all together in a straight line. So I'm just creating a knot on the bottom so that they don't fall off, of course. And at this point, you could also create a tassel and do that as well on the bottom. I decided not to do that for this particular one, but I think it would look really, really good as well. So I'm just checking to see how my florals will fit inside the wood bead. And this actually worked really well. The wood bead hole was a little bit bigger. So now I'm just also going to figure out the length that I need for my hanger. So it was still a little too long, so I just pulled down the knot and then I retied that knot at the bottom. Again, you need that knot to stop this from coming apart. So I just tied that. I think I double tied it. I'm adding some hot glue, pulling the knot into that bottom hole, and then that will prevent it from falling apart. Now I am adding some hot glue in between the beads, and that's helping it all stick together as well. The other thing that'll help keep it all together is that I left a nice long stem on my greenery that fits down in between. So I'll be showing you that in a moment. I decided to add just a little bit more hot glue on the bottom to help hold the knot in place. And now I'm going to add the stems of my greenery. I just split the string at the top apart, and now adding some hot glue, I'm putting my stems down in the middle of the hole there, as you see me doing. You can see how I had a nice long stem, and that's going to help stabilize this whole piece as well. So now I am just going to kind of weave, I guess you could say, the string in around the greenery just to make sure it's going to hang properly as well. I'm adding just a touch more greenery just at the base for a pop of color. You could use evergreens as well, or any kind of Christmas greens, but again, I'm just trying to keep this garden look for these pieces. I added a little floral and I think it looks adorable. And now, I don't know, I felt like it still just kind of looked a little bit plain. So I decided to add some moss, but you could totally skip this step if you find that it's just a little too much. I also wanted to hide the knot on the bottom, so I'm adding a touch on the bottom there. And I'm going to add a little bit in between the beads. And I have to admit, I think I overdid it at this point, but I still think it looks good. Of course, feel free to add any little decorative piece that you'd like for any of your ornaments, really. This is definitely a great way to use up those scraps. So I'm sharing another rustic modern ornament. I've got this cute little wood stump I got from the dollar store, a little succulent. I needed 2 eye hooks, some moss, and some jute twine. So I'm just figuring out the center for my eye hooks. I needed to create a hanger, but I needed the eye hooks to be on one side each of the little stump. So I'm taking an awl to create some deeper holes because the wood was a little stronger, so I needed some better guide holes. And now I'm just starting to screw them in, and I ended up needing to use a tool so I could just apply a little more pressure to screw these in. And at this point, I should have put my jute twine on, but I didn't. I went and used some moss, and I needed the moss to, again, cover up those eye hooks. I didn't want that showing. And also thought it kind of created like a bit more of a woodland look using the moss. This is preserved reindeer moss, by the way. I got it from my local dollar store. So I put that into place, and I just removed any of the bits that I thought was just a little too much. And again, I should have tied the jute string on. I ended up struggling with it. So I'm going to just add my succulent. It was a little bit too big for this project. I just removed one layer, and then I just pushed that down into place using some hot glue. It's looking super cute. Now I'm going to add just a little more of the reindeer moss to hide those eye hooks. And then I'm going to be using the jute twine. Now, because of all of that moss that I used, I struggled to string the eye hooks, and I tried using my scissors and poking it through. I ended up using some tape and created a stronger pointy tip to thread it through, and it helped, but I still struggled with it a little bit. You can see me here. I'm struggling. I'm like, I can't fit it in this way. So I went the opposite, and I tried to do the other side and still struggled, but I did end up getting it done, and it does look super, super quick. If I would have added the jute twine first, I would have got this project done super fast, but you know, you guys can learn from my mistake. So I just tie that on with a knot. And then again, if you want to add more moss to cover up the knot, go right ahead. You could also add some evergreens. That would look really pretty. Some faux snow would look really nice too. But I really like how this one turned out. Dollar Tree has some self-laminating sheets, so I grabbed a pack of those along with some pressed flowers that I had done last year, along with some in the spring. You'll also need a little mini hoop, embroidery hoop for this project. This one is about 4 inches from what I know. This is the first time I've used these self-laminating cards, and this is the white part here, that's the backing. So I needed to keep that into place for now, but I flipped it over, so then I'm tracing a circle with a pencil where the backing was sticking to, the sticky side. So that way here, I'm gonna like peel this off, and I am going to know exactly where I need to place my leaves and florals. So this is a really pretty fern, and you wanna make sure that they are being pressed upside down, because where the sticky is, the sticky side, that is the front of our laminating sheet. So I'm just going to create a pattern. I'm just adding my ferns. Again, I pressed those last year, and these little violets, I pressed these in the spring. Adding those, and I've got some rose leaves and some rose petals. I'm going to add those for a little pop of color. I thought maybe even some like evergreens would be really pretty in something like this. Every once in a while, you'll see me flipping that sticky side down. I just want to make sure that the front side is looking good. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to work on this. Once you've got that all in place, I thought I could remove that little sticky tab that you see me fiddling around with, but once I started fiddling around, I realized, I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about that, because that's all going to get cut away. I put the sticky side down to the backing, and now I'm using a brayer to smooth this out. You can use a soft cloth and kind of burnish it, but I didn't want to break any of my florals. So that's why I thought maybe the brayer worked best, and it actually worked really, really well. So I'm just going to continue to work over it. Once you have that figured out, I am going to use some hot glue to adhere this to the piece. You'll have to work quite quickly because the glue does set up quickly. So if you know of another adhesive that could be used for this project, please leave a comment in the comment section down below to let me know. So I've got the hoop glued down. Now I'm using my craft knife, and I'm pressing the blade hard up against the hoop, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out. I did have to go around a few times to loosen the plastic and the dry florals. Once it's cut out, it'll pop out really easily. So I wanted just a little bit of added insurance here. So I decided to use the tip of my glue gun, and I'm just running it over the edge of the hoop. So that will help to seal the laminating sheet, as well as get rid of any excess hot glue that might have oozed out. You don't have to do this step, but I just wanted that just extra strength added in that spot. So again, I'm using this beautiful organza ribbon, and I'm going to create a simple loop. And this time around though, I'm going to use the knot to adhere it to the top of the hoop. So I trimmed off the tails and adding some hot glue to the top here, and I'm going to press that knot down into place, and then I'm going to allow it to set up. Now I'm going to go ahead and again create a simple loopy bow, and I'll use some hot glue to glue that into place. And I have to say, I think this is one of my favorites. I think it just turned out so beautiful. I can't wait to play around with some more pressed leafed ornaments and other creations. I just think they're so fun to play with. I've got this video here that's packed full of ornament inspiration for you to check out. I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me today, and we will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.